The situation in Tampa Bay is, how do we say, kind of confusing. So
Mm.
let's get some clarity with Kevin Weiss of Locked On Rays. It's a Locked On MLB, Locked On Rays crossover. Let's start it.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans. Welcome to a Locked On MLB, Locked On Rays crossover. This is the podcast we talk about all of Major League Baseball or just the Tampa Bay Rays all year long. We don't have an off season here. I am your host of Locked On MLB, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. Today's episode is brought to you by our good friends over at Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code Locked On MLB for $20 off your first purchase. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever it's called now. And on Instagram, I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball. On Blue Sky, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. You may be hearing my dog barking. That's because she's excited that it is a crossover. We've got Kevin Weiss from Locked On Rays. Thanks for joining the show again.
No, thank you, Sully. I appreciate it. Maybe not under the best terms based on what's going on in Tampa Bay, St. Petersburg, but still happy to be aboard.
Yeah. It would be nice if we were talking about, your old buddy Blake Snell signing a very long-term deal. He played the long game with the 1 year with San Francisco. It's his time in San Francisco. He was pulled quickly from that, kind of appropriately, doing his legacy. But no, sadly, the Rays have turned into one of the most confusing stories of not just this year, but really the foreseeable future. And as you know, I did Locked On A's this whole regular season along with Locked On MLB. And I got a front row seat for a team that's being torn from their fan base, being made to play in a minor league ballpark. And I was there for the final game. People were grown-ups were crying. That's a self-inflicted wound, and I have zero sympathy for the A's organization. I have lots of sympathy for the Rays organization for this mess right now. But I wanted to really have you on because I've talked a lot about it, but I'm an outsider. You're an insider. And the one person who has more power than Rob Manfred right now is the man upstairs who basically treated the Trop as if it was a can of sardines. And when you have a stadium that is not supposed to have a draining system, suddenly needed some draining. Let me tell you from my point of view.
Okay.
And then you tell me where I'm wrong.
All right.
The Rays have been wanting to get out of the Trop. God chipped in his hand and ripped it apart. The idea of rebuilding a stadium that no one wants to build anyway seems like a giant waste of money and a bad use of funds that could be going elsewhere. But now the bond situation for a stadium that I think is ridiculous that they're building it near the exact my whole life I've been hearing, well, it's in the wrong spot. If it was in a different spot, it'd be drawing well. Like the Lightning draw great in downtown. I mean, there's a good sports fan base there. They got great TV ratings. Build it in Ybor City or downtown Tampa. But now they want to build it next to Tropicana Field. But now that looks like it's in jeopardy. And that the dirty R word, the relocation word, is rearing its ugly head right now. Where am I wrong?
No, I think you pretty much hit it on the head there. Yes, a lot of people are thinking what you're thinking about. It doesn't make a lot of sense to repair Tropicana Field when it's going to be torn down in a couple years. On the flip side, part of the idea is if you repair it, some or most of those funds could be reimbursed by FEMA down the line. So it might cover it from that point of view. And as far as we all agree, St. Pete is not the most ideal location for having a Major League Baseball team. Ybor City, somewhere in the heart of Tampa, Hillsborough County, where the population hub is, that's the place to go. Kind of like where they're going to play for 2025 Steinbrenner Field. You just wish the capacity was a little bit higher there. But the reason, or multiple reasons, why the Rays ultimately stuck with St. Pete was one, Pinellas County and St. Pete were able to offer more money than their neighbors to the east of them. And secondarily, the Rays have a pretty sweetheart deal in being able to profit from all the acreage surrounding that new ballpark site. And that's where the funding will come in. And the way it's been explained to me previously was it almost doesn't even matter what the attendance is, what the average attendance is at that new ballpark, because the Rays are going to be making hand over fist on all the redevelopment from hotels, restaurants, residential, you name it. They'll be able to get a piece or a very large piece of the pie, and they purchase that land at discounted value. So that's kind of where the option of staying in St. Pete kicks in. And quite frankly, we wouldn't even be having this conversation if not for, like you said, Sully, the man upstairs, if a couple hurricanes didn't rip through and ruin the Trop and make elected officials reconsider, or maybe not totally reconsider, but delay the going forward with the bond. So that's where we are today, pretty much.
The funny thing is that I understand they want to be the landlords for basically a city within a city. That seems to be the new big thing. And I think they're all taking a look. It's funny when a stadium, if you look at trends of stadiums over the years, even going back to like the building of the first multi-purpose ballparks in the 1960s through the Camden Yards craze, now they're, at first it was, oh my God, we have these new modern multi-purpose stadiums with all the amenities. And, they've been vilified, but at the time, Shea Stadium and Riverfront Stadium and Veterans Stadium were all looked upon as these great leaps forward. And then Camden Yards showed up and it was like, oh, here's what happens when you have this fake old-timey feel to it. And then, the freaking Braves have built 2 stadiums since then. There was no need to build a new Yankee Stadium. There was no need to build, but Camden Yards led the way. And now what Atlanta has done, basically building a new Brave city, that seems to be, that's what the A's had been wanting to do. And quite frankly, I think they could have done that in the Coliseum because they don't have to share it with the Warriors or the Raiders anymore. But that's a whole different story. But it looks like they're trying to do that in Las Vegas. I think eventually they'll do that in Sacramento. And I wanted it in downtown Tampa. Yeah. I have relatives who live on the Sun Coast of Florida. Okay. And they talked to me about how Tampa's a great downtown. Lightning are very popular. And if there was a ballpark, kind of the way San Diego has their ballpark in the Gaslamp District, and they draw great. If you had a nice ballpark in the downtown Tampa, it would seem to do well. But I was gonna give it a shot. I was happy they were staying. Yes. I was happy they weren't moving. I'm not one of these people who say, just move them. I like the fact that in my lifetime, only one franchise has moved. But what has happened is tough because if the bonds aren't signed in or approved, I guess is the word I'm looking for, in Pinellas County, that could be a death knell, I think, for the Rays in a way. I mean, in Tampa Bay. Am I off base in saying that?
No, I think you make fair points there. And to your previous statement, that's kind of what the Rays and St. Petersburg are going for, is that battery look with Atlanta, a city within a city. That is kind of the poster child of, hey, this is what we want to bring to St. Pete. And hopefully, I mean, we'd have to wait to see if it actually gets built and what the attendance numbers are, but that a draw like that would maybe encourage more people to go to St. Petersburg than previously, where you just have an old beat up dome stadium and a huge parking lot surrounding it. because that's kind of the problem right now among crossing the bridge and trying to get from the Tampa side to the St. Petersburg side. But outside of the Trop, there you kind of have to go a little bit of ways to enjoy the amenities before the game and after the game, and do everything that people want to do in terms of socializing and making it a hub to be. But so the bond thing, it's interesting. So we have two things at play. We have Pinellas County and we have the St. Petersburg City Council. Pinellas County, those bonds would be levied through tourist tax dollars, which means that those bonds can only be used for specific purposes, like new ballparks, renovating spring training facilities in the county, museums, beach nourishment, so on and so forth. The St. Pete bonds, that is actually being used with property taxes, more or less. Mm-hmm. Monies that could be used for sewer system upgrades, infrastructure upgrades. And a lot of people now, with the hurricane or hurricanes rearing their ugly head, it makes you wonder, should we be spending this amount of money on a private billion-dollar corporation when you have sewage that flooded into people's homes? They had to turn off 2 wastewater plants during the course of Hurricane Milton. But it really, there's been a lot of moving parts with this. It's now gone into negotiating in public in a he said, she said, Rays said, elected officials said, back and forth. But there was an interesting conversation that one of the county commissioners had with Brian Auld, one of the Rays team presidents. And even before the deal was voted upon, he had expressed concern about the Rays being able to hold up their end of the bargain. Brian Auld had, in essence, said, I'm doing everything I can to keep this deal together. It might be a little bit more expensive than we thought it would be, because as part of this deal that was signed back in July, the stadium agreement signed back in July between the county, the city, and the Rays, is that Tampa Bay, the Rays, would be responsible for all cost overruns. And now you have the hurricane, you have the timeline of things pushed back, and we've run into some issues here. And now it's getting to the point of the elected officials, the county namely, and I think the mayor has supported things as well, is they just want some clarity from the Rays, because the Rays have been very wishy-washy and mealy-mouthed through this scenario of what they want, what they're looking for. I think at the end of the day, they want a new deal. They want a better deal that, they might not be as responsible for all the cost overruns, and they just want more money contributed to help them pay for it. But you had a thought. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, let's talk about that new deal when we get back here, because that opens up like the top of the Trop being opened up, that opens up a lot of questions in itself.
Yes.
Hey, everyone, I'm going to be heading up north pretty soon. And when I do, I'm going to try to get tickets to see the San Jose Sharks. And what place am I going to buy the tickets at? That's going to be Gametime. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And you can use it like I used to go to the National League Championship Series in Los Angeles. I saw the Dodgers and the Mets and got a great set of tickets and a great deal. You have all-in prices, no surprise fees at checkout. You got seat views. You got a panoramic view from the seat in the app before you buy. Lowest price guarantee or Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference, and your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It is Gametime. All right, with Kevin Weiss of Locked On Rays, I do want to talk to you the fact that the Rays are looking to get an improved deal. I want to stress something right now, because I spent a giant chunk of this season trashing the Oakland A's and their pathetic management for reneging on deals, not being honest about deals, and everything. I don't know that much about as much as you do about the Rays management, but it does strike me that unlike Fisher and the A's, I do think the Rays were trying to stay. I do think the Rays were trying to not move. I think the Rays are not looking for cheap loopholes like the A's have been for the last 8 or 9 years, and finding a few. So I don't have the same vitriol, but whenever I see someone say we want a new deal, especially in the light of an act of God, um, it does kind of put a sour taste in my mouth, as if to say, wait a minute, why should you be getting a new deal when the entire county is affected by this?
Yeah, it's a very, very icky. And the issue with the Rays and why the politicians are so upset is that they have not been very straightforward about really directly saying what they want. And it's kind of been hinted at, yeah, they want a new deal. But that's where you had the chairperson of the county commission, Kathleen Peters. She sent a 2-page letter to the Rays executive saying, hey, by December 1st, declare your intention, whether you plan to continue with this or you want out. If you want out, send us a termination letter so we can wash our hands away with this situation. Because there's been a lot of talk about the bonds being delayed, and that is important, but just because they're delayed doesn't mean they wouldn't be accepted at a later date. But the issue with the bonds being delayed is it allowed, this came during election season. You had 2 new commissioners voted in to the county that weren't supportive of the deal as part of their campaign. So you basically added a no vote or 2, and that kind of put things behind the 8 ball a little bit. The other thing too that really irked Pinellas County, and I guess maybe to a lesser extent St. Pete, is that the Rays, they essentially just said, hey, we're playing in Steinbrenner Field. They didn't give much of a heads up to them as to this is what our intention was, because in a perfect world, they would try to play at one of the spring training sites in Dunedin or Clearwater, where the Phillies and the Blue Jays play their spring games respectively, and their minor league teams, single A teams as well, to at least kind of keep a little buzz of that tourism coming to Pinellas County, where, you know, it was basically right when a lot of these people, from my understanding, is they heard about it when it was announced, that they didn't get a phone call. You know, there was no
that empirically sucks, especially in the light of why everything is happening.
Correct. Yeah. So that's kind of where we are right now. And now you have the can being kicked down the road a little bit because there's a standstill on the trop repairs, which it's kind of interesting. If you go back and read some of the articles, the city council for St. Pete actually voted to repair the stadium. And then after a recess, they heard, I guess, Brian Old had spoken with reporters and said, yeah, you know, we actually really don't want them to go ahead and repair the trop because that's just going to delay us even further, and it's going to cause some other logistical issues for us. So then they came back after recess and flipped their, I don't know how they brought up that action item or agenda item again. And they basically, they went from saying, yes, we're going to repair the stadium, to shortly thereafter saying, no, we're voting against this. So,
by the way, you brought up commissioners. Speaking of commissioners, you know, the whole nastiness that has happened with Oakland and with basically Sacramento, and now with the lunacy that seems to be happening with the Rays, that would be the nice time to have a commissioner of baseball kind of step in and start to come up with some of the for the lack of a better word, plans for the good of the game.
Right.
It just seems like all these things are happening in a vacuum, and we are going to have 2 not one, two major league teams who, as recently as 2020, the A's were a playoff team. And you have to go all the way back to 2023 when the Rays were a playoff team. And now these two teams are going to be playing, we know next year in a minor league ballpark. We know 2025. We know 2026, probably 2027. And that if the thing falls through with in St. Pete, it's not like that there's another major league ready stadium already built in Ybor City or in downtown Tampa. It's not like you can just prop one up. Like, there's not a lot of the multi-purpose stadiums. Those serve the purpose. And I had pointed out that, as I said, please, Rays fans, listen to me. I do not take the concept of relocating a team lightly. I want, and with a capital want, the Rays to stay in the Tampa Bay area and give their fans a chance to show what great fans there are. But there also comes a point where if they can't work out a stadium deal in Tropicana, this is not like the A's, where the A's could play in the Oakland Coliseum. There's no stadium for them to play.
Right.
And so that's when you start to look at, could they play in New Orleans in the Superdome? Could they play in the Alamo Dome? Could they play where they do in Omaha, where they play the College World Series? I'm not saying I want that, but if it falls through in St. Pete, then we're talking 2030, 2031 before they're playing in a major league stadium.
Yeah, it's crazy. And maybe I'm naive in thinking about this, but I would hope that Manfred and the umbrella of Major League Baseball can step in. And I don't know if they can provide some financial assistance for the Rays to get through this. I mean, I think they put in a lot of help and a lot of work to get them into Steinbrenner, and then the Yankees willing to do that as well. But I think they've, at some point as a league, have to step in. If you don't want to deal with the PR disaster of Tampa Bay and Oakland simultaneously, something has to be done. And now we're almost to the point of followers of the Rays are almost dejected to the point of, okay, we've acknowledged I guess they don't want to be here, or they don't want to put up what needs to be put up to stay here. We just hope, and this is where the politics get involved and the lawyers get involved, is that that the Rays don't go to another city or another state and are still able to capitalize on the redevelopment property in St. Pete, where they're essentially unwanted owners of, hey, they're in control of all this land, but there's not the anchor of the ballpark, and they're playing in Charlotte or Nashville, something to that extent. So that's kind of what we're dealing with right now as well.
Well, when we come back, I want to talk about some of the long-term issues. The short-term issues of what's about to happen could really, really cripple the 2025 Rays. Hey, it's time to hear from our friends over at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So if you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to start today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Hey, one little piece of news, no big signings today, but two-time World Series hero for the San Francisco Giants and Mountain View, California native who went to high school in Pleasanton, hometown kid, Brandon Crawford announced his retirement after 14 seasons. He was a 3-time All-Star, 2-time World Series champion, won the Gold Glove 4 times, had terrific power, and got some big, big postseason home runs, and was a Giant fan favorite for the Giants as he came up big in the playoffs and got the big grand slam in the wild card game against a pretty good Pirate team in 2014 and batted 300 or batted 304 actually in the 7-game victory for the Giants over Kansas City. He was the link to the other great teams of the past because he also played in the 2021 playoffs for the Giants. So, Godspeed, Brandon Crawford. Wonderful career, and played his final season, had a cup of coffee with the St. Louis Cardinals. So he's spent his first 13 years with the Giants, gave it a shot with the Cardinals last year. Didn't work, but Giant fans, of which I know many, many of them, he was a huge fan favorite because he was a local kid. All right, let's get back to Kevin Weiss and the Tampa Bay Rays. Tampa Bay fans do not care about Brandon Crawford. I did my own private.
It's all good.
They're going to be playing in Steinbrenner Field, much to the surprise of Pinellas County.
Mm-hmm.
And there were already, I was watching a couple of videos about this and reading a couple of things. They've been kind of maneuvering the schedule. They switched a game with Minnesota. They switched a game with the Angels, a series that they get to play at home instead of on the road because the weather is better for baseball in the spring in Florida than it is in the summer. I spent a whole summer in Central Florida. It gets hot and it rains every day.
Yes.
And the 70% of the games of the second half are going to be road games for the Rays. They're going to be going on these super long road trips at the end of the year because they don't want to have 7 quadrillion doubleheaders.
Yes.
Or games canceled or anything like that. And by the way, the Rays are, ironically, the Rays are going to be playing in rain, and the A's are going to be playing in sun rays of Sacramento, of which the weather is going to mess both of those teams up. But I digress. So you can't do this with a team and say you're going to play 70 some odd. I forget what the exact number was. I'm going to round it to 70% of their games in the second half are going to be on the road, especially for a team that's, they didn't have a great year last year, obviously, but they always have talent. They always find a way to at least put a quality product on the field. But that's going to be really, really hard to do if you're either playing in a minor league facility or playing on the road the whole time.
Yeah, it's kind of a catch-22. And it's not even their home ballpark per se. Tropicana Field is, but it would be interesting to poll the players and see what they think about all this. My guess is if they can avoid whatever they have to do to avoid the humidity, the heat, the rain delays, the double headers in the summer, I think they would more or less take that, even if that means playing X number more games on the road later on in the season, because I think it would just be very, very hard on the players. It's going to be hard on the players regardless, but you just imagine the type of exhaustion and injury issues and the amount of extra depth that you would have to have based on rain delays and double headers and all that. It's not a good situation to be in. And, you mentioned it, Sully. The Rays weren't that good this past year. And I know it's still relatively early in the hot stove league, but it's not like they made any maneuvers to make their team better, at least better offensively. One of the worst offenses in all of baseball, one of the worst offenses in franchise history. And I guess having some home games at Steinbrenner Field will help that, being a smaller ballpark and you have the short left field porch like you do in Yankee Stadium. But they really haven't done anything to better or address their team. They've really honestly just ended up cutting some more salary here and there by trading Jose Siri and non-tendering a couple players as well. But I wonder how serious this team or the front office is about being super competitive. And plus you have I guess it's a two-way street, because which free agent would want to come to the organization right now with everything in flux? The fact that you'd be playing in a minor league ballpark in 2025, you don't know where you're going to play in 26 and beyond, and you got all these road games as well. So the Rays are kind of stuck right now on the field and off the field.
Yeah, it's going to be a real hard ticket to sell. Like, come go to a minor league ballpark and see a major league game, because it's not like those fans are like, oh, wow, we get to see a new team. I mean, it's the same team that they can watch.
Mhm.
And this was one of the big problems when the Marlins played at Joe Robbie Stadium all those years. When, yeah, we sometimes there's some very good Marlin teams, but do we want to sit in the middle of a football stadium baking in the sun or having rainfall on us? I mean, good luck with that. I mean, you're going to see the same thing happen in Sacramento when you're seeing the sun beaten down or it's really way too hot to go out to a ball game. There's no shade. I've been to games in Sacramento and I've been to games in Central Florida, and it is tough to sit through them,
Yeah.
and and good luck signing any free agent. But I will say, I do have a wish list. I
Okay.
do have a fantasy. If there was justice in the world, the 2025 American League Championship Series would be between the A's and the Rays. I would love that with every fiber of my being. I would just, Ken Burns, get your crew right there. This is a whole chapter. I want to see that. These two teams that did face each other in 2019, and then I was going to say 2020, but no, the Rays played the Astros, not the A's, but I digress. But you know what I'm saying.
Yes, I do.
You know what I'm saying.
No, I would. Hey, if we're adding genie wishes to the equation, I would say I'll take the Rays being the worst team in baseball the next handful of years if that means they'll stay in Tampa Bay for the next 3+ decades. So whatever they have, if they have to slash and dash payroll to make the construction work, at this point, I'm cool with that, just based on where we're at.
And I can't stress this enough. I know your Rays fans may not listen to me that much. When I bring up, and I have brought up the possibility, because I said there aren't. It's one of the reasons why teams can't move, because there's no stadiums waiting for them. When the Raiders built the new stadium in Las Vegas, it wasn't a multi-purpose stadium. It was a football-only stadium. There are very few places where a baseball team could play Major League Baseball in 2025, even temporarily. And that's why I picked San Antonio and New Orleans and Omaha and possibly Montreal as really the only 4 places on the planet, or at least in North America, where you could put a team, unless you want to go the route of putting a team in Puerto Rico, which opens up a whole other thing. I brought that up just out of logistics, because if we look up and say, all right, there's no, if it falls apart in St. Pete, you're starting from scratch. And if you go to stadiumpage.com, there are all these great, renderings of a Ybor City stadium, a downtown Tampa stadium, but that's just a drawing. You need to secure the land. You need to raise the money. You need to do an environmental study. That's basically what killed the Howard Terminal situation for the Oakland A's. And you have to do all of that while dealing with a region that's still recovering from a couple of massive hurricanes. I was saying there may be a reality, not what I want, but a reality that they may say that may not work. And then if you look up, it's 2031 and they're still playing in a minor league ballpark. That'd be a disaster for baseball. So I don't want them to move. I think they can succeed. I just think the Rays would be stupid if they didn't at least have a contingency plan, which I hope is plan G, not plan A.
Yeah, and I would think that in avoiding all that, the Rays can simply be honest, and hopefully the honest answer, or the answer that they should give, is yes, we want to stay in Tampa Bay. We're committed to staying in Tampa Bay. Go ahead and proceed with the repairs to Tropicana Field, and hopefully by 2026 we'll be able to play there for a couple years as we get the new stadium built. That seems to be the simplest solution here. But the other parties that are making the decisions, I guess, don't see it that way. And really, at the end of the day, if the county and the city want to hold the Rays' feet to the fire, approve the bonds. Once you approve the bonds, the deal's in motion, and it's all on the Rays. And if they default, they default. And that's where, Major League Baseball or somebody would have to step in to make it work. So really, you don't need to go through this back and forth. Just stop delaying the bonds, approve the bonds, get the project started. And if the Rays run into financial issues, that's them in Major League Baseball to try to figure out.
You and I should run baseball. You and
I like it. Yeah.
You can be commissioner, I can be deputy commissioner, or vice versa. One of the two.
I'll take
All right.
deputy to start. I don't need all that front and center publicity right now.
Yeah, I don't mind it. I don't mind it. All right. Well, hey, Kevin, I hope when we talk next, we're talking about good things going on with the Rays and not all this stuff. This is my least favorite stuff to talk about, but it's important to talk about.
Mhm.
And I wanted to get you on the damn show because I want to talk about it. But Kevin, tell people where we got a little bit long today. Tell people where they can follow your show.
Yeah, absolutely. First off, happy Thanksgiving holiday to everybody.
Oh, yeah, happy Thanksgiving. I forgot that's going
on. Locked On Rays, we're on YouTube. We're on all podcast platforms. You can also follow us on X and Instagram, Locked On Rays. And you can send us an email too, lockedonrays@gmail.com. That's where we can be found.
And you can follow us at Locked On MLB Pods at Twitter or whatever it's called now. And on Instagram, I'm your pal Sully. I moved on over to Blue Sky. It's Sully Baseball and Blue Sky, but I'm still at Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Talking with Kevin Weiss about the vagabond team that isn't their fault. This has been a Locked On MLB, Locked On Rays crossover. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.